Police pounced just after 6 a.m. in Armidale, intercepting a vehicle in a bowling club car park and searching a 23-year-old man who was allegedly found to be in possession of 132 ecstasy tablets. They then raided this Armidale property, where another 2 men were arrested. All have been accused of being part of a syndicate dealing more than 750 ecstasy tablets worth more than $26,000. The arrests follow a 6-month surveillance operation by Strike Force Maine, established to investigate drugs in the New England area. The men were refused bail and were due to face Armidale Local Court this afternoon on commercial and indictable supply charges. Meanwhile, 5 people have been charged after unrelated dawn raids across Tamworth. Strike Force Pindri moved on this house in Hamilton Court, arresting a 35-year-old man and a 36-year-old woman and charging them with a string of offences, including supplying an indictable quantity of methamphetamine and ecstasy. Police also searched and seized a car they allege is the proceeds of crime. They then moved on to a house in Ridge Street where a 36-year-old woman was arrested. 2 other people, a 34-year-old man and a 19-year-old, were also charged. Blake Doyle, NBN News.
The vocal group of protesters voiced its concerns in the heart of Newcastle, among them John Lampkin, who's been a resident of the Wallsend Aged Care Facility for 4.5 years. He's slammed state government plans to sell off his home, along with 11 similar facilities across the state.
We've been put there because our families can't look after us anymore because we're getting on in years. We're having too many falls, some of us, and some of us are badly in need of these type of facilities.
Margaret Johnston's 35-year-old son Ben is also a resident at Wallsend. She fears a change of ownership could be disastrous.
He's very, very happy there, and I don't want to see him move to somewhere where there won't be enough staff if it's a privatised situation.
While Minister for the Hunter Jodie McKay wasn't in Newcastle today, she did issue a statement saying careful planning is being undertaken to ensure that residents' ongoing care needs are met and that any decisions relating to a resident's future would be made in consultation with their families where appropriate. Colleen West, NBN News.
Just having someone visit your home, provide you with a nice meal, makes all the difference.
The thought of riding 165 kilometres today was hard enough for these cyclists, let alone facing a headwind as they made their way to Raymond Terrace.
Today's been probably one of the toughest days. Emotionally, knowing that it's the finish line, knowing that I've got friends and family here supporting us, it's been a tough one.
The pain was worth it, with family and friends eagerly waiting for them. With bodies and minds refuelled and muscles relaxed, the riders were joined by their loved ones for the final stretch of the Kilometres for Kids ride to the John Hunter Hospital. Simon Burt had plenty of reasons to push through the pain barrier over the past 6 days.
My main motivation is really to ride in memory of my daughter, Olivia, who passed away when she was only a couple of days old. And the ride has been scheduled to run over her birthday.
And this afternoon, the sign all the riders had been waiting to see. The end of their journey met by bubbly and laughter.
It's enough to get a woman's heart racing, if you're a mare or a filly. "12 exceptional champion stallions, including Fastnet Rock and Choisir, took part in Coolmore's Stallion Parade Day, all boasting top pedigrees and racing careers. As well as outstanding progeny and service fees to match. Breeders from around Australia were scrutinising the horses ahead of the breeding season, which begins next week.
You look to breed a perfect athlete, if there is such a thing, and with the breeding season starting on the 1st of September, obviously that's only a few days away, gives them an opportunity to then make an informed decision as to which stallions they'd like to use with their broodmares.
5 of the stallions call Australia home. The rest are jet-setting bachelors who have been flown in from Ireland and America. Among the local lads, Encosta de Largo. His service fee began at $8,000. Now he won't step out of his stables for less than a staggering $200,000 per mare.
Put quite simply, he's the best stallion in the country. The figures reflect that.
10 of his offspring have become racetrack speed machines, already winning more than $1 million each. The horses will parade again tomorrow and Sunday. Jane Goldsmith, NBN News.
At almost 140 metres long and weighing more than 4,000 tonnes, HMAS Newcastle certainly made for an impressive sight coming into its namesake's harbour this morning. And residents certainly liked what they saw. The guided missile frigate left Garden Island in Sydney late yesterday, with 180 crew on board, 11 with very proud links to Newcastle.
Yeah, it's pretty exciting. I've never actually pulled into Newcastle before, so it's pretty exciting.
It's actually really good to come into Newcastle, especially when my family's there.
It's going to be fun. Yeah, it's always good to get back there. Yeah.
It was no pleasure cruise for crew members who endured a number of training exercises on the voyage north, including a fire drill, a man overboard style rescue and an all-important artillery test. At the helm, Commander Justin Jones, who has more than 20 years' experience in the Navy.
It's been a wonderful ship to be a part of because of the close association with the City of Newcastle. I think that's one of the highlights of this particular ship.
But the main reason for the visit to Newcastle was to launch Operation Think Big, which aims to raise $50,000 for the Hunter Orthopaedic School at Waratah. Sailors will run, walk and swim a distance equal to that between Newcastle and Newcastle upon Tyne in the UK while on board the ship.
It's amazing that such a big ship would, want to be part of our tiny little school. So we're very privileged.
And it's set to be a busy 3 days for the crew of the HMAS Newcastle. As well as commitments to the Hunter Orthopaedic School, sailors will be expected to be on their best behaviour tomorrow for an open day on board the ship at Throsby Wharf. And for those with special links to the city, Sunday will give them a rare opportunity to spend quality time with their friends and family. Tyson Cottrell, NBN News.
Branko Kalina knows this Sunday's clash with the Gold Coast will be one of the toughest of his career. He faces a team in red-hot form and starring his son Jason.
I've followed it very closely. I'm his biggest fan, I'm his biggest critic. I know what he's capable of.
Kalina Senior has at least received some good news, with Fabio Vigneroli cleared to play after recovering from a corked thigh. The Italian will be key to the Jets' bid to keep possession and find holes in the Gold Coast defence.
Ball is like a diamond. You don't give a diamond away, so you don't give the ball away so easily either. So that's what we're working on.
The match will be a big one for Angelo Costanzo, who's playing his 300th National League game, and this season could be his last.
We'll just have to wait and see. Still early on in the season. The body feels good, so we'll just wait up one season at a time.
He's a long way from achieving that mark, but midfielder Labano Haliti's keen to make a big impact for the Jets after returning from Europe to cover for the injured Marko Jesic.
I learned a lot, so I hope I can contribute to the Jets and show what I've learned.
But he's unlikely to play this weekend as he's still waiting for clearance from Football Federation Australia. Kate Mitchell, NBN News. The new national trophy arrived by courier today, and the North Stars want their names etched on it first. Having finished the regular season on top, they're favourites to take the title, but history is against them.
That's the tough thing about this league. The minor premiers have never won the premiership, so we'll try and break that curse.
Melbourne and Adelaide face off in the first semi-final, with Newcastle against the Gold Coast in the second. The winners then meet in the grand final at Warners Bay on Sunday. It's a big weekend in a range of codes, with the first leg of the NBN football finals on tomorrow. Hamilton heads to Edgeworth and Broadmeadow hosts Valentine. Cessnock and Wyong have the chance to advance straight into the Newcastle Rugby League Grand Final when they meet tomorrow, while Central and Curry will fight for survival on Sunday. It's week one of the Newcastle Rugby Final Series, and both matches are at Maitland's Marcellin Park. And young Maitland triathlete Aaron Royal will continue his build-up to next month's World Cup race on the Gold Coast with an event at Airlie Beach this weekend. Now based in Wollongong, the talented youngster's been tagged one of the country's next big things, but he'll soon get a taste of what elite competition is like.
Anything can happen on the day. Anyone can have a good race and come away with even winning it maybe, but I'm not under no illusions of how good the other guys are.
It was all about prize-winning wines at Pecolbin today, with gold medal and trophy-winning drops on display. The winemakers used the Hunter Valley Wine Show Awards to gauge where they're at and to make the selection process a little easier for the consumer.
Because it takes that guesswork out, people feel a little bit more comfortable in buying that wine from you.
As for next year's vintage, things are looking tricky. Hunter Valley vineyards are seeing buds about 3 weeks earlier than normal due to the warm weather. The lack of rain is clearly evident in the soil.
The grapes do need water to survive and photosynthesise and accumulate sugars and ripen.
Without rain, Hunter vineyards will be forced to produce a smaller crop. In the best case scenario, this can equate to a better quality vintage, but it can also mean less money coming in.
We're well placed in terms of water storage to at least get us through the first part of this season quite well. What comes after that is in the hands of the gods, really.
But with cellar door sales up 6% this year, winemakers aren't hitting the panic button just yet. Kate Mitchell, NBN News.
We took it up and we've been associated with the school since commissioning, and we just keep coming back and assisting them in whichever way we can.
After enjoying a week off, the minor premiers got straight back to work with Alfred Whaleboat handing Chris Pine a run to the line for first points. But they seemed to clock off after that. Mitch Williams carving up the middle before finding the man who scored more points than any other this season in Josh Mantalato. He crossed for the first of a quick-fire double. The Roos again catching the Goannas napping with Wyong skipper Jamie Davis squeezing through a number of players to score and put Wyong ahead 14-6. Since the injury to country star Chris Adams, Ryan Gregory has stood tall for Cessnock and he again turned things back their way. Soon within two, Cessnock found itself going into half-time in front, care of a last play kick which landed in Beau Ryan's lap. Whatever coach of the year Todd Edwards said at half-time worked wonders, with the Goannas re-emerging with the sort of play that has them favourites for the title this season. In command of the final 40, Cessnock books successive grand final places, but this time it plans to go one better than it did last season.
What was once a place of healing is now a pile of rubble. The fire which destroyed the cottage broke out at around 9 o'clock last night and quickly spread to nearby bushland. It's believed an electrical fault was to blame.
Everything that was in there was donated by kind people, so we had it totally underinsured because they didn't have a monetary value in a sense because they were given to us, but the fact that they were given to us makes them even more valuable.
My two cats are probably the main thing I was mostly worried about, being told hopefully that they'll be around.
Everything. I had everything I owned in my room.
Mayumari is run by survivors of childhood trauma for survivors of childhood trauma, and the cottage was used to prepare them to re-enter the workforce.
A totally critical part of Mayumari. I mean, it's a house. We're a charity that is run by volunteers. We don't have income, and this is, a $100,000 house that's burnt to the ground.
Tyson Cottrell, NBN News.
We've had a very, very poor year last year where we had 5 fatalities. 3 mine workers were killed on the job and another 2 mine workers were killed in journeys either going to or coming home from work. We have great concern that there is a strong push to do away with what we call mining-specific legislation and just throw mine workers into the swim with everybody else. And
all the pre-game talk was about the clash of the Kalinas, with Jason up against his father Branko. And Kalina Senior almost had early bragging rights, with the Jets the first to test. United quick to return fire. Heartache though for Sean Ontong, the young Jet almost in tears when help from the field after his long-awaited comeback from an ankle problem ended after just 30 minutes. It got no easier for Newcastle, but Sean Rooney proved he can give as good as he gets with a stunning strike. His maiden goal in the A-League won for any highlight reel and leaving the Gold Coast to chase a game for the first time this season. Veteran defender Angelo Costanzo brought on after the break for his 300th career game. Kaz Patafta almost put it out of United's reach. United's Michael Thwaite made sure Song had no chance to shoot, but a brave Jets outfit hung on to score a memorable win, but with a quick turnaround to play Melbourne, injuries will be a concern this week.
Authorities backburned throughout the night, and today the focus was on small fires still active within containment lines.
There will be fire activity here probably for the next day or so, but we're just making sure that it doesn't escape those containment lines at the moment.
The bushfire began on Gangan Road and roared through Tomaree National Park, coming within metres of more than 50 homes at Fingal Bay. Many residents left their homes on the advice of police, including Roy McClung.
We took all our photo albums and all our passports and legal documents with us and left, and I didn't think we'd find the house when we got back.
Leonie Jones chose to stay and defend her property.
The fire brigade were helping us, hosing everything, and they were back-burning back up the hill. So it was safe, even though the hill was aglow, it was all in flames.
Port Stephens hasn't seen a fire of that size or intensity for at least a decade, and the Rural Fire Service says it's concerned that one occurred so far out from the start of the season and in relatively mild temperatures.
Doesn't look good, so I think if anybody that is living in the urban bushland or even in a rural community that's prone to bushfires, my suggestion would be to prepare your homes and prepare them now.
Lauren Bladwell, NBN News.
Catherine Hill Bay looks set to remain a sleepy seaside village. Residents are thrilled with the Land and Environment Court's decision to quash approvals given to Rose Group to build around 600 homes there and another 187 at nearby Gwandolin.
I think it's probably the best news I've heard in years.
It's made my day. Wonderful.
For the past 2 years, the Gwondoland Summerland Point Action Group has fought Rose Group and the state government over the development, claiming former Planning Minister Frank Sartor was biased in approving the project.
It was a comprehensive victory as far as I'm concerned. It was really a victory for the little people.
Justice Lloyd found the minister's approval of the concept plan of the project application were affected by a reasonable apprehension of bias, and that the minister took into account irrelevant considerations in determining both applications. Justice Lloyd then declared the concept plans and project approvals for the residential developments at Catherine Hill Bay and Gwandolin to be void. He quashed the original approvals and granted court costs to the action group. Independent Lake Macquarie MP Greg Piper says he wasn't surprised by the ruling.
The development as it was proposed was always poorly considered. It had very little planning merit.
Late this afternoon, current Planning Minister Christina Keneally stated the government will not appeal the court's decision and there will be no retrospective legislation introduced in relation to the proposal, while Rose Group says it's examining the court's decision in detail and will then consider its options. Madeline Bond, NBN News. It's the big question on mortgage holders' lips. With interest rates tipped to rise by the end of the year, should they lock in or stick with variable rates? Toronto residents at least had the opportunity to ask one of the industry's key players this morning as Aussie Executive Chairman John Simond opened a new branch of the business.
Fixed rates have jumped by about 2% the last probably 4 months, and I really think now they've got a bit expensive, and so I wouldn't be diving in.
Mr Simond also had some advice for first home buyers.
Don't overcommit yourself, don't borrow too much, don't think these low interest rates will last forever.
Above all, he says it's vital to do your homework before buying a home.
There are good buys out there, but you've got to know what you're doing, you've got to know the area, you've got to make sure the fundamentals are there, close to transport, infrastructure.
Aussie John also opened a branch in Belmont and plans to open others in Maitland and Cardiff in 2 weeks' time. He says the company's investment in the Hunter is evidence of its faith in the region's growth. Madeline Bond, NBN News.
The eldest of 4 children, 16-year-old Matthew Heath, felt the pressure when his father was diagnosed with bipolar disorder. At the time, Matt was just 12.
It was pretty tough because I have to become man of the house with mum, help look after the kids, yeah.
His mum Karen found out about a service for children of parents with a mental illness, COPME for short, a service which Matt says helped him work through his troubles.
It gave me a lot of help talking to Chris, because when you're that young you don't really know much what's happening, and it's hard because you can't really talk to many of your mates because they haven't been going through the same experiences. And just giving someone you can talk to will help you when you have the bad times.
Chris Newton has counselled many young people like Matt. Up to 23% of Australian children live in families where at least one parent has a mental illness.
Children have for a long time been seen as the silent sufferers in families where there's been a parental mental illness.
There are 3 COPME services in the Hunter region, providing one-on-one counselling and other support.
Providing them with an opportunity to vent, I guess, what their experiences are. I guess a lot of validation around that as well, helping to link them in with other sort of appropriate services.
11-year-old Will Hogan has also been a COPME client. As his dad dealt with depression, Will sought out Chris's help.
He was just a confidential ear sort of thing, and if I didn't have somebody to talk to, I'd just be all bottled up still.
What kind of things were you feeling?
Confusion and frustration. Yeah, it was pretty tough.
With the support of COPME and their tight-knit families, both Will and Matt are coping well. They've become advocates, urging other kids to reach out.
I know what it's like, and definitely they should try COPME. Yeah, it'd be very nice for them, I reckon, to talk to someone.
You definitely need help. you can't. I don't reckon I could have made it through just on myself.
The boys are pretty focused and firmly set on making the 8, and not only making the 8, making the 8 as high as they can.
I've been doing a fair bit of video stuff during the week on him, and he's playing with a bit of confidence, so I'll have it out for me, have me work out for me, yeah.
A late season surge has Curry just one game away from the grand final against neighbour Cessnock, and it certainly knows how to create a grandstand finish. George Nadira's inclusion has been a huge boost. The Knights recruit has been a star of the player placement program, and didn't the Bulldogs need him yesterday? With the team locked at 16 all with Central, Nadira booted the Butcher Boys out of the competition in golden point extra time. If they beat Wyong in that, it'll be a local derby decider. Group 21 Premier Singleton will try and defend their title against Greta Branxton this weekend after beating Aberdeen by 6. In Newcastle and Hunter Rugby, University was favoured to reach the next phase of the final series after a quick-fire start against the Blacks when David Kennedy crossed. But Maitland defied its critics to bounce the students out of the finals with a 22-point win and set up a showdown with Hamilton in next weekend's elimination semi-final. And John Majerowski has been named the NBN Football League's Player of the Season, with Edgeworth's Gary Wilson and Robert Jovanovski the Coaches of the Year. It was barely noticeable at the time, but Sean Ontong knew he was in big trouble as soon as he hit the ground. Enjoying his first start since long-term ankle and groin problems ruined his first season at Newcastle, suffering another major injury was hard to take. Ontong snapped his Achilles, and the 22-year-old had surgery today to repair the damage. Early indications are that a full recovery could take up to a year. While his injury is nowhere near as bad, the Jets are unlikely to have marquee man Fabio Vignaroli for Thursday's match in Melbourne after he was replaced at halftime yesterday with a hamstring strain. The injuries put a dampener on an otherwise incredible win for Newcastle, which ultimately came down to the boot of Sean Rooney. His first goal in the A-League, enough to ensure Newcastle handed the glamour Gold Coast side its first defeat.
It was a good team performance. We were well organised. We played some good stuff as well. But let's not get carried away. It's only one win. We need to back it up.
Jim Callanan, NBN News.
Malcolm Turnbull started his day at Tomago Aluminium, which expects the Rudd government's proposed carbon trading scheme to erode $85 million a year from its bottom line. Tomago is seeking an assurance that it will be fully protected from the scheme until its international competitors face a similar carbon tax.
It will start to erode our international competitiveness. So we're about trying to secure that and make sure that we are on a level playing field with the rest of the world.
Those concerns were voiced to the opposition leader, who offered his full support. Mr Turnbull wants the government to wait 6 months to finalise the legislation, giving it time to see what sort of scheme is adopted in other countries.
These emissions-intensive, trade-exposed industries need full protection, because otherwise all you end up doing is exporting the jobs and exporting the emissions. So there's no environmental gain.
The wider business community then had its turn to quiz Mr Turnbull at a Hunter Business Chamber lunch.
It's been acknowledged that the Hunter will be severely impacted by an emissions trading scheme, so having Mr Turnbull here today has given us an opportunity to ask him directly what he's going to do about that.
Labor's federal member for the Hunter, Joel Fitzgibbon, says the government is already working with industry to ensure the scheme strikes the right balance between jobs and the environment. Lauren Bladwell, NBN News.
Yesterday's Land and Environment Court decision was music to the Sweetwater Action Group's ears.
Hooray! At last, the government's been given an indication that the residents, if they band together and have a voice and follow through on their actions, they can get some sort of a legal or a proper result.
Next month, the group will take the New South Wales government to court over the approval of the state's biggest residential development, Huntley. The $1.8 billion project will see 7,500 homes built at this site near Branxton. The group argues Planning Minister Christina Keneally was biased in approving the project. It also wants the court to overturn the land's recent rezoning to residential.
We feel that if we can get our action across the line, it will have a much better outcome in that then the developers have really seriously got to think about what they do in the future.
Huntley developer LWP has issued a statement saying it's reviewing the court's decision regarding the Catherine Hill Bay project. Should the Sweetwater Action Group succeed in its challenge, it could have ramifications for other major residential developments planned across the Hunter. Cessnock Greens councillor James Ryan also wants the state's Lower Hunter regional strategy, a future development blueprint, thrown out.
So I think that given the court's decision that has found that this type of agreement showed bias on the part of the planning minister, we've really got to go back and redo the Lower Hunter regional strategy, because that's a strategy which is supposed to guide development for the whole of the Lower Hunter.
Madeline Bond, NBN News.
The shopfront launch was about breathing life into a city centre, hoping for a brighter future.
It's creating awareness for the local fashion designers and boutiques. We're trying to put Newcastle on the fashion map and encourage people across New South Wales and Australia to actually come to Newcastle to buy their clothes.
Towards the end of September, 54 local designers will showcase their work, culminating in an evening runway event with proceeds from ticket sales going to the Cancer Council.
We've got musicians, we've got models, makeup artists, hair artists, so it's creating a fashion culture in Newcastle, I think.
And as we head into the warmer months, European fashion designers eye the finest of the state's wool clip, some of which was up for grabs at the Newcastle wool sales today. China buys 70% of Australia's wool, but some of these fleeces may well wind up in high-end fashion houses.
A lot of buyers here represent mills overseas who are processors, and we have some that go right through the wool chain.
They have the voices of angels. And while the women in the choir of No More Knocks aren't celestial beings, they are extraordinary. They've overcome domestic violence and managed to find solace through song, along with an inner strength many of them never knew they had. Last night they were busy rehearsing in Maitland ahead of a performance on Friday with London's Willem Quartet, which will mark the start of the inaugural Crossroads Festival. The Australian String Academy run event is being held at various sites across the Hunter this weekend to celebrate classical music and raise money for women's refuge and outreach service Carrie's Place.
Core business is to provide crisis accommodation for women and children who are basically at risk of or are homeless because of domestic violence.
The choir has only existed for 2 years, but has already made quite a name for itself.
They've been to Sydney, they've performed on stage with the choir of Hard Knocks and with Jonathan Welsh. They've been to Melbourne, they've made a CD.
Madeline Bond, NBN News.
A long trip home was even more uncomfortable for Zeb Taylor, whose season hangs in the balance, as does his shoulder. Arguably Newcastle's form forward, he may not play again this year.
I felt a pop straight away out, and then, when I was on the ground, it popped back. I rolled over and popped back in, but it didn't help when Bronson Harrison was giving me a bit of a chicken wing.
The Raider was charged for that. Newcastle's Steve Simpson for this, but an early plea will see him avoid suspension. Only favourable medical reports will see Richie Fayoso ready to rumble on Sunday in what's become an all-or-nothing clash against Penrith.
I think it's a good one for the NRL. I don't know if it's too good for the Knights.
The coach is no fan of this either. With Ben Rogers facing a heavy price for his frustration, the coach did well to hide his own.
It's going to be hard to contest, that's for sure. So he's disappointed in himself. Apologised to the team, and we've got to move on a little bit now.
And that's with Scott Giroux at halfback for what will be his first NRL game in 6 weeks, and against a man he once battled with for the Knights' number 7 jumper in Luke Walsh.
We've got ourselves to blame for where we are, and we're still, control our own destiny there in making the 8. So, yeah, we're dusted off after last night and ready for the challenge.
Jim Callanan, NBN News. Talk about rolling the dice. Joe Keenan had an ironclad deal to remain in the Scottish Premier League with Hibernians for the next 12 months. But news of a chance with Newcastle saw all that change in just a matter of days.
Had to terminate my contract over at Hibs in Scotland on the Friday, booked the flight Friday, jumped on the plane Saturday and got here yesterday morning.
He would have signed with the Jets 18 months ago had it not been for the Scottish deal, but hopes to secure a second chance.
I've been given the opportunity to train with them for a few days. I believe this week's difficult because there's a game Thursday, but we'll get a session in today and tomorrow, and we'll see what happens.
The coach won't be rushed, even with a growing list of injuries. His priority remains Thursday night's match in Melbourne and backing up that win against the Gold Coast.
We haven't won 2 in a row for a long, long time. That's a huge test. And to be able to do it against 2 of the best teams in the competition will really send a message out there.
It's unclear if Donny de Groot will make his long-awaited comeback from injury, but Jason Hoffman will play, and if recent arrival Labano Haliti gets cleared in time, so will he.
Well, fingers crossed, I hope he is. He does possess a little bit of silk there. He's very comfortable on the ball, and he does give us other options.
This is about as close as you'd ever want to get to a 40-ton humpback at the tail end of mating season, let alone two.
In this situation, we had a male that was looking to mate with a female, and the female was looking to mate with the boat. And so in that case, it can get pretty exciting.
The chance meeting took place late yesterday in waters off Nelson Bay. The female's strange preference for the whale-watching cruiser drew vocal objections from the male. Encounters like these, and hopefully more conventional ones, are tipped to become increasingly common between now and November as 12,000 humpbacks migrate south along Australia's east coast. Whale experts say if you're lucky enough to be visited by a curious or even amorous whale, it's important not to panic.
Stop the propellers. You can leave the motor on, but stop the propellers so that the whale cannot get cut. Otherwise, if it does get cut, then it'll try and get out of the way, and the first thing it does is lift its huge tail, which can weigh 20 tonnes, and you don't want that hitting onto a boat.
Madeline Bond, NBN News.
Before the state government abolished stamp duty on caravans, the industry says many buyers travel to Queensland to make their purchases to avoid the 3% slug. Justin Pizarook from Aussie Motorhomes believes that business is now staying in New South Wales.
We've noticed a big increase in sales. We've gone from probably one a month to one a week.
The tourism industry is also reaping the rewards, with holiday parks in the Hunter, especially those in Lake Macquarie, reporting a strong winter season.
I definitely think it's affordable given the economic climate, and they're able to have the flexibility to move around, be in the open space, have that freedom to do things where they can't in a let's say a motel.
Dungog's Faye King-Adams and Alex Moore are among those taking homes on the road with them. They've just purchased a Winnebago and even won a new car in the process.
You meet a lot more people. It's been fabulous on the road and in the parks, and the free camping and the caravan parks.
But it seems it's not just grey nomads opting for a motorhome or caravan over a hotel room.
The general population is probably a bit older, but we are starting to see some younger people get out there and do it as well.
Really nice lifestyle. Nice in caravan parks, nice out in the bush. Yeah, I'm thoroughly enjoying it.
Lauren Bladwell, NBN News.
A remorseful Ben Rogers was today coming to terms with his on-field actions. After striking out in Monday night's match in Canberra, he's accepted the league's 3-match punishment, but the harshest criticisms have come from within.
I spoke to my old man the other night, and he's, I could hear the disappointment in his voice, and obviously not proud of, the events that took place. And I think I've let my team down, I've let the club down. And I think that's the thing that's hurt me the most.
It's a far cry from his work off-field. An ambassador for Down Syndrome New South Wales, Rogers' involvement with a number of organisations, such as the Hunter Orthopaedic School, saw him nominated by the Knights for an NRL Community Medal. And with one punch, he's concerned that reputation took a big blow too.
Friends and people that know me sort of know that's out of character and it's not in my nature, and I hope the young kid's all right.
Rogers plans to speak with Raiders player Daniel Vito soon as he comes to terms with the fact he's unlikely to play again this season. Jim Callanan, NBN News. He's rarely ever down, but Scott Giroux admits this season has been tough. Dogged by injury, he's played just one NRL game since early June, but with Ben Rogers suspended, the young half has got the call he's been waiting for.
Mate, I was nervous. The butterflies started straight away and the palms were a bit sweaty, but you know, it was a little bit of a relief more than anything to know that I'm sort of back in the team.
And what a blockbuster, a winner-take-all duel against a Panthers side now led by a former teammate in Luke Walsh, who left the Knights mid-season.
I don't approach it saying I've got to get on top of Walsh or anything like that. It's the Knights versus the Panthers, and everything else is second rate.
I knew I had to play him at one stage, so it's ended up being this weekend, so just looking forward to it.
Luke Walsh, he definitely is going to be fired up against the boys.
For Adam Woolnough, the game holds added significance. He's set to retire at the season's end, and his old club could end his playing days where they began. But he's not making this match about him.
The boys will be fired up. They got a loss on the weekend as well, and you know it's do or die, and it's mouth-watering.
Jim Callanan, NBN News.
When he arrived at Newcastle, Lubo Milicevic grabbed the headlines by speaking his mind. These days he prefers to let his performances do the talking. Former teammates in Melbourne believe Milicevic has a point to prove. His coach sees it differently.
I don't think he's got anything to prove to anyone other than to himself, and that is that he's a good football player and he needs to continue to play good football for him to get the recognition that he deserves.
Italian import Fabio Vignaroli has been picked to face the victory, but Kalina isn't confident.
He's under a cloud, huge cloud, but we will take him with us and we'll make a decision a bit closer to the game.
Labano Haliti is yet to receive clearance to play from the Polish Federation, with the Jets hoping it arrives before kick-off. Dutchman Donny de Groot is back in the squad after a 2-month layoff, while Jason Hoffman returns after being rested last weekend. The short turnaround has been tough on the players, but a pain-killing injection is helping Tariq Elrich cope with a long-term groin injury.
Obviously had the day off after the Gold Coast game and trained twice, and it hasn't given me any strife.
Both Melbourne and Newcastle have shown patchy form this season. The Jets' mentor believes tomorrow night is the perfect time to start building momentum.
The result against Gold Coast was superb. However, we need to bounce back. We haven't won away from home for a little while. And, to be a top team, you need to do that.
Mitchell Hughes, NBN News.
This wasn't just any barrier trial. Punters rolled into the NJC for more than a free breakfast. The real draw card was Queenslander Black Piranha, in town 2 weeks ahead of the Cameron and the start of a big spring.
That's the only reason why I kind of brought him here, just to give him a look and just to get him a feel of the track.
The Group 1 Stradbroke winner will start his campaign with the time-honoured Cameron Handicap. In a spring run, his connections hope will finish with Cox Plate success. There was another star attraction today. Paul Perry's Newport is winding up for another tilt at the Melbourne Cup, and the trainer already likes what he sees.
Yeah, well, he certainly headed that way, and he's come back. I reckon he'll come back way better than what he did last preparation. But this time, then he seems brand new. I reckon he'll have a good campaign this time.
They trialled in a field of 4 and were both eased around the 1,100 metre trip. Expect much more when the whips are cracking in a fortnight.
His first up record's quite good. 2 preps back, he won a listed race over 1,300 at the Gold Coast.
He'll run Saturday week in the Theo Marks, and then probably go on to the George Main a fortnight after that, and then just have a toss-up where he goes from there.